When the white smoke rose above St. Peter's Square, it wasn't just the signal of a new pope. It was the quiet revelation of a man whose life had already been a living sermon. A man not shaped in palaces or headlines, but in dusty roads and silent prayers. His name, Pope Leo XIV, echoed through the square and into the hearts of millions. But the story behind that name was still waiting to be told. What lies beneath the cassock of the first American and Augustinian pope is not a tale of ambition, but one of gentle strength, steadfast presence, and a love for the forgotten edges of the world. This is that story, a story of how one soul, known affectionately as Father Bob, rose from the working-class neighborhoods of Chicago to become the spiritual leader of over 1 billion souls, not through power, but through presence. Robert Francis Prevost was born not into comfort, but into community, in the south side of Chicago, where neighborhoods sang in a dozen languages and faith was carried more in hands than in words. Young Robert discovered early the unglamorous beauty of service. He was a child of devout Catholic parents who stitched their days with prayer and hard work. The Mass wasn't a Sunday event, it was an anchor. It wasn't doctrine that first touched his heart, but devotion. In the alleys of that city, where steel met sweat and parishes doubled as sanctuaries from street violence, the boy found not only the church, but his first whispers of vocation. He didn't dream of Rome. He dreamed of relevance, of being needed, of answering the call, not in words, but in the quiet yes of a life offered. Those early altar boy mornings, those late-night family rosaries, the look of resolve in the faces of immigrant grandmothers, those were his seminary. And when he eventually entered the Augustinian order, it wasn't out of pride, but obedience to a pull stronger than ambition. But God did not keep him in comfort. He sent him to Peru, and it was there, not in books or chapels, but in mud brick homes and long desert walks, that Father Bob became more than a priest. He became a brother to the people. He did not arrive to teach. He arrived to learn. From the moment his feet touched Peruvian soil, he discarded the robe of superiority and donned the humility of service. He learned their language not because it was expected, but because it was human. He sat beside sick children, mended the wounds of protesters, carried medicine where ambulances wouldn't go, and brought the Eucharist where no tabernacle could be found. They didn't call him Padre out of obligation. They called him that because he earned it. He listened when others lectured. He wept when others fled. And when the world moved on, he remained shoulder to shoulder with the poor. His Spanish was broken at first, but his love was fluent. He belonged to them, and they to him. He eventually made it official, taking on Peruvian citizenship. Not as a political act, but as a declaration of unity. He didn't just serve the people, he became one of them. By the time the Augustinian order called him to be Prior General in 2001, he had already learned the secret of true leadership. It begins with kneeling. For 12 years, he led the global family of Augustinians, not from behind a desk, but on foot. He visited missions in Nigeria, sat in prayer circles in Vietnam, ate rice from the same bowls as his brothers in the Philippines. He led not through policies, but through presence. Feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or unsure of your purpose, Bible Decoded is your step-by-step guide to understanding Scripture and finding peace, clarity, and strength in God's Word, even if you've never read the Bible before. Start your transformation today. Click the link in the comment or description to grab your copy now and let God speak directly to your heart. He understood that fidelity wasn't about control, but about communion. He balanced the ancient traditions of St. Augustine with the pressing realities of a fractured modern world. Where others feared change, he saw opportunity, not for innovation for its own sake, but for a return to the heart of the gospel. He championed the formation of young vocations. He uplifted voices from the margins, and quietly, year by year, he became the kind of shepherd who wasn't followed because he commanded it, but because people knew he would walk with them through anything. When Pope Francis appointed him to the Congregation for Bishops, the whispers began, not because he campaigned, but because he didn't. He became the invisible glue at synods, translating languages, bridging theological gaps, disarming tension with a smile and a story from Peru. He was the rare figure who could sit with both progressives and conservatives and leave both feeling heard. In a world fragmented by ideology, he was strangely whole. And then came the conclave. When the white smoke billowed skyward, many expected a familiar name. Instead, they heard Leo XIV. But behind that title was no stranger. There was a man known to many as simply Father Bob. His election was fast, almost too fast for pundits to spin. Because those who knew him knew, he didn't chase the office found him. Beyond the papal white, he is still a man who watches White Sox games when he can, who keeps a worn rosary in his pocket, a tennis racket in his closet, and a laugh that echoes with sincerity. His humility is not performance, it's muscle memory. It's who he has always been. And in a time when spiritual leaders are often wrapped in spectacle, he is wrapped in simplicity. He greets Swiss guards by name. He prays before dawn without cameras. He walks the Vatican gardens not as a ruler inspecting grounds, but as a son seeking stillness. His papacy, though fresh, has already begun to soften the corridors of the church. He brings not proclamations, but presence, not demands, but dialogue. He has already begun reshaping the church's tone, not with force, but with faith. He calls bishops to listen more than they speak. He invites the laity to bring their wounds, their doubts, their hopes to the altar. He reminds young people that holiness isn't out of reach. It's in the decision to love anyway, even when the world doesn't applaud. He's not trying to be popular. He's trying to be faithful. His papacy stands at the intersection of many worlds, North and South America, the traditional and the emerging, the monastic and the missional. And in that intersection, he plants his feet firmly, not to divide, but to connect. He knows the abuse crisis still bleeds. He knows secularism knocks louder, but he doesn't panic. He prays, and in that prayer, there is clarity. The church will not be reborn through perfect statements, but through imperfect saints. And so, as the bells ring again in Rome and a new chapter begins, not with a roar, but with a whisper, the world watches, not for drama, but for depth. In Pope Leo XIV, we are not seeing the rise of a religious celebrity. We are witnessing the return of something ancient, something tender, something true. A pastor, a pilgrim, a pope who remembers that the church is at her best not when she shouts, but when she listens, not when she flexes power, but when she washes feet. This is not just the story of a man. This is the story of what is still possible when grace chooses the humble, when God, once again, surprises the world. This is just the beginning. In the quiet hours after his election, as global media scrambled to uncover every detail of his past, those who knew him best did not rush to give interviews. They didn't need to. Their memories said enough. In the barrios of Chulucanas, a candlelight vigil formed spontaneously. No grand television screens, no orchestras, no formal prayers, just neighbors and villagers, some barefoot, some still in work clothes, gathering under the open sky to pray for the man they still called Padre Roberto. To them, he had never been just a priest. He was the man who built wells, blessed marriages, and stayed through storms when others have the option to leave. They didn't cheer because he became pope. They wept because he had always been theirs. And that is the paradox of Pope Leo XIV. Though the world now calls him Holy Father, he has never stopped being someone's brother, someone's neighbor, someone's friend. The humility that defines his approach is not a political strategy, nor a stylistic choice. It's the unshakable truth of his character. He does not use humility as a tool. He lives it as a truth. Even as cameras flash and guards escort him through ancient doors, there remains in him a deep awareness that greatness is not found in being seen, but in seeing others. And that's exactly what he continues to do, he sees. He sees the mother struggling to feed her children in Rio de Janeiro. He sees the aging priest serving without resources in rural India. He sees the lapsed Catholic lighting a candle out of habit, still hoping for something more. His papacy does not begin with sweeping doctrinal change or controversial decisions. It begins with presence, with the slow but deliberate turning of a massive ship not by force, but by alignment. He is not geared to rewrite the catechism, but to reawaken the courage within it, not to erase tradition, but to breathe life back into it. And he knows that the Church, if it is to survive in the 21st century, must remember that people do not want perfection, they want presence. They want leaders who do not preach from balconies but walk through life beside them. And that is who he has always been. And still, Pope Leo XIV is not naive. He knows the Vatican is a place where centuries of bureaucracy weigh heavy on innovation. He knows change comes slowly, that resistance is inevitable, but he is not deterred. Reform, in his view, is not primarily about changing laws. It's about changing hearts. It's about converting the Church not into something new, but into something honest. He does not believe that renewal comes through media soundbites or synodal slogans. He believes it comes through fidelity to Christ, one person, one prayer, one act of mercy at a time. Already his days are filling with small gestures that feel monumental. A visit to a neglected convent, a private letter to a bishop overwhelmed by scandal, a lunch shared with janitorial staff, without cameras, without fanfare. He brings flowers to the tomb of his predecessor. He meets with abuse survivors in private, apologizing not with prepared statements but with tears. These are not public relations moves. They are the steps of a man who leads not by being above the people, but among them. And yet, his style has not gone unnoticed. Critics whisper. Some say he is too quiet, too reflective, not forceful enough for an age of global unrest and church crisis. But those who truly observe understand. He is not slow. He is deliberate. He is not passive. He is patient. And there is a kind of strength in that patience, a strength born not of political instinct, but of spiritual conviction. For the first time in the Church's history, the Bishop of Rome carries a United States passport. But Leo XIV wears that fact not as a badge, but as a background. His Americanus is not one of dominance, but of diversity. He carries the experience of a country that has always been a tapestry of cultures, ideologies, and contradictions. A place where churches sit next to fast food joints, where freedom is celebrated, but faith is questioned. And in that contradiction, he has learned to love complexity. He brings to the Vatican not a Western ideology, but a Western heart that has known what it means to be both rich and poor, both privileged and persecuted. His American identity is not nationalistic. It is pastoral. It tells the world that the Catholic Church can be both ancient and new, that it can hold the Latin of the Mass and the language of the streets together without losing either, that it can survive in silence and speak truth in the town square. And so when the camera pans over his shoulders and the crowds cheer Viva il Papa, what they may not hear is the quiet voice inside him, whispering still, Señor, aquí estoy, envíame a mí. Lord, here I am. Send me. What sets Pope Leo apart is not just his past. It's his direction. He looks not to the center of the Church for its vitality, but to its edges, to the forgotten dioceses. The missions where Mass is celebrated under a thatched roof, the hospitals without electricity, the seminaries that form future priests with nothing but a catechism and a dream. He listens to the bishops from the Congo as carefully as he listens to cardinals from Cologne. He knows that the heartbeat of the faith does not only echo in marble halls. It pulses strongest in the huts, the fields, the corners of society where faith must work like bread and water, or it will not survive at all. In this way, his papacy becomes not just a return to simplicity, but a revolution of intimacy. He does not speak of the poor, he speaks to them. He does not preach about peace. He walks into the chaos and offers peace by his very presence. And in doing so, he reminds the world what the Church was always meant to be, a home for the homeless, a voice for the voiceless, a refuge for the restless. There is no shortage of voices saying the Church has lost touch with its people, that its rituals feel distant, its language outdated. But Pope Leo is not afraid of this critique. He embraces it as a challenge. He does not seek to water down the gospel, but to bring it within reach. His homilies are short. His visits are long. He speaks of Christ not as a theory, but as a friend. And in doing so, he shows that the church does not need to be reinvented. It needs to be remembered. People do not leave the church because it is too holy. They leave because it has forgotten how to be human. And Pope Leo, the priest who once gave his shoes away to a barefoot boy in Peru, has never forgotten that. Even as he dons the white robes of Peter, his feet still carry the dust of the road, and the scent of sheep is still on his shoulders. It would be easy to look at this election and see coincidence, to chalk it up to demographics, geography, the arc of time. But those who walk by faith know better. This was not coincidence, it was providence. In a time of noise, God chose a man of silence. In an age of branding, he chose a servant. In a church searching for itself, he raised up someone who had never forgotten its soul. Pope Leo XIV may not give us fireworks, but he gives us something far more powerful, light. The steady kind that does not blind, but guides, that does not flicker with fame, but burns with fidelity. So let the world say what it will. Let the critics analyze and the pundits predict, but those with eyes to see will recognize what has begun. A quiet renewal, a hidden revolution, not in policy, but in posture, not in control, but in communion. The church has turned a page. And at the bottom of that page is a signature not written in ink, but in service, a signature that reads, Father Bob. This is not just the story of a man who became pope. This is the story of how the gospel still breathes in our time, how holiness still walks the streets, and how sometimes the most powerful change comes not with trumpets, but with a whisper. This is Pope Leo XIV, and this is just the beginning. If this content blesses you and you'd like to support our mission, you can buy me a coffee or give us super thanks. Every contribution helps us create more content to inspire and uplift others. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on my future videos.